5 years ago, when I saw somebody post something on Twitter, a cool project they had built, I immediately thought, oh, I wonder how they built that. I wonder what the code that they used to build it would be. I wonder what packages they used. I wonder what libraries. I wonder how they thought about this, and that. And I was genuinely curious, like, how did you do that? And I would often, go in the comments of the tweet, and I would see like, oh, here's somebody, shared the repo, and you would look at it and you would sort of like figure out like, oh, they used this one package for the chart there, and they used this one package for the animation there, and you would pick up on these things. Today, when code really doesn't really matter that much and people don't really care about it, we're in this different part where whenever I see somebody post something cool, I no longer think, oh, I wonder what the like how they actually went about to write the code for this. I immediately think, I wonder what the prompt could have been for this. I wonder, like, how could you prompt the agent to do this specific task? I wonder which model they used. I wonder which, coding agent harness they used. If they used, Claude Code, if they used Open Code, if they used Codex, if they used some other tool, if they used, I don't know, whatever it is, Cursor, and what have you. Like, I wonder how they built this with AI is almost always the first thought that I have. And an interesting thing that I've noticed is that nobody ever really shares these specific things. Prompts are becoming one of the most like important skills we have in the world right now, and people are not really sharing them. I think there's an insane level of like what you would call sort of like this moat, I guess, really, with prompts. Nobody wants to share them because if they know that like if they come up with this, one way of developing certain things, um, and one way to really prompt it, they get this massive advantage of everybody else. And I think people are afraid of losing it. And I think we have really shifted the sort of general trends and the industry from caring about, like the intricacies and the specific ways people would build things. Because now code has become so commoditized day over day that the only thing that really matters is prompts. And I think you might have noticed this as well if you're on Twitter. Nobody really shares prompts. People always share projects. And people are sharing projects at an insane speed right now. People are posting 1 or 2 projects a week. But they never really share how they built it. And I think it's an interesting thing. Like, people are gladly show you their GitHub repo, but they will never really show you the prompts. Sometimes you will see people post like, oh, here's this amazing workflow I have to summarize my emails, and then it's like, oh, comment, or like, if you comment peanut butter, I will send it to you on DMs. Like, the gatekeeping is insane right now with the prompts. And it's always like basic stuff as well. It's never really like anything insanely cool, I would say. But I think like this level of like gatekeeping is a very interesting thing that I think will at some point start, flipping into the sort of mainstream ecosystem as well. Because most engineers in the world are not vibe coding. Most engineers actually do write code by hand. I think, people in tech space and in Silicon Valley, San Francisco, we are very like, everybody's writing code, of course, with agents, but I don't think that is necessarily true throughout the world. But I think when that happens, I think we're gonna see an interesting market dynamic where like 5 years ago, you would have boot camps teaching you how to code, and they would teach like what is MongoDB and what is React and how do you make a nav bar in CSS and whatever it is, And I think in like a year or two, maybe just a couple of months, we're gonna see people start doing like boot camps and courses and what have you about like how do you vibe code with agents. Like somebody's gonna sell a course for like $999, and it's just gonna be them showing you like 10 prompts they have on like how to build a SaaS app, how to one shot a SaaS app. And I think that's gonna be pretty like valuable to some extent. I think companies or like people in general will look at that and be like, wow, this is actually sort of good, and people will pay it. And I think vibe coding and like just using agents in general will sort of become a little bit more mainstream from that. But I think we haven't really hit that tipping point right now, and I think the industry in general is very scarce of showing how to use agents. You will have you know big companies like I think OpenAI and Anthropic, for example, are very much pushing on like just use agents, and they are I think the only ones really showing like how to really use them effectively, especially with like I think Anthropicus are like big proponents of like, oh, you should use loops now, and you should use like, I don't really know what like really is the meta over there, but like you know they're really pushing these things. But I think what they don't really show is like how do they prompt, like what are the words that they are giving to the agent to go off and do this thing, is very rarely ever shown. And I don't know, it's just a thing that I've been thinking about for a bit of like how, like just the fact that this is never really shown. And I think we're gonna see something at some point with like a tipping point. It's gonna be very interesting. And I think one of the big reasons for why these or like people are gatekeeping the prompts is because prompting is probably gonna be one of the most important skills, and already is probably one of the most important skills out there today, is being able to prompt effectively. And sort of giving up the prompts and the way you're doing things is sort of, you know, giving up your advantage in today's space, which sort of makes sense. But I think people are going to get better in general. But I also don't think that we're going to get into a space where like anybody can just build any sort of level of system equally good to each other. I think the even though you can show people, you know, this, you know, one prompt here and this one thing here, whatever, I think the skill of building is never been more important in today's like world. I think you are going to see the like shift or like the cliffs of good builders and bad builders be equally big as it is or as it was a couple of years ago. I think the only difference is that the top builders can do it at a very or like at a faster pace, but also the like technical need for it is not gonna be at the same or in the same way at least. And what I mean by that is that, and I'm not saying that you don't need to be technical. So I don't think that's true. I think that is very much a lie. I think technical people are gonna be extremely important, but I think like let's say you're an unbelievably good backend engineer, for example. You do not need to sort of become an unbelievably good front-end engineer to sort of build a good product on your own, you know, back-end, front-end, like the entire spec. You don't need to be extremely excellent at every single point, but I think you sort of still need to know some things to be able to actually like build it. Building good products is very, very hard, and it's always been hard, and I think it's always going to be hard. I just think certain parts of the experience are going to be more or less important as we move on. Um, and I think the engineering talent is still going to be unbelievably important. It's just the way you're working with it um, has changed and will change. Like writing code has never really been the hard part. Like when you were working 5 years ago, when you were writing every single character by hand, it did not really, like that was not really the hard part. The hard part was not writing a for loop or console logging this thing or connecting to a database or whatever it was. That was never really the hard part. The hard part was thinking, what do I even want to build? How technically are we building that? Like what's the system we're sort of building up here, and how what do we need to think about? And what are sort of the trade-offs we're gonna do as we're building it? And I think that is always gonna be the same.